If you have felt that strange little shock at the grocery store lately, you are not imagining it. A few bags of basics can now cost what a full cart used to cost not that long ago. Fresh food goes bad fast, prices shift with no warning, and one storm, outage, or supply delay can turn a normal shopping week into an expensive scramble. That is why the smartest pantry foods are not just the cheapest ones. They are the ones that stay useful for years, sometimes decades, and still make sense when life gets inconvenient or expensive. The real advantage is not fear. It is leverage. If your pantry holds foods that last, you buy less in a rush, waste less, and depend less on whatever price the store decides to charge that week. Some of these foods are simple, some are old-fashioned. A few are surprisingly powerful, but every one of them earns its space by lasting longer than most people expect and doing more work than the label suggests. We are moving from solid pantry insurance to the true heavy hitters, and by the end, you will notice a pattern. The foods that save the most money over time are usually the least flashy on the shelf. So let's start with one of the most dependable staples ever made. White rice deserves its place because it solves several problems at once. It is cheap, filling, easy to cook, and when stored properly, it can last 25 to 30 years or more. That makes it one of the best low-cost calorie reserves you can keep at home. A 20-pound bag often costs less per serving than almost any packaged convenience food, and unlike frozen meals or bakery items, it does not demand constant replacement. The reason is simple. White rice has had most of its outer oils removed. Those oils are usually the first thing to go rancid in whole grains. Seal white rice in Mylar bags with oxygen absorbers. Place those in food-grade buckets, and suddenly you have a food that can sit quietly for decades. That matters financially. If a storm hits or prices jump, rice lets you build meals around one low-cost base instead of buying expensive emergency food at the last minute. It works in soups, stir-fries, casseroles, and basic porridge. And because it is familiar, it does not feel like punishment food. That is part of smart shopping too. A pantry staple only saves money if your household will actually eat it. And once you have a base like rice, the next question is obvious. What do you pair with it when fresh produce disappears first? Canned vegetables rarely feel exciting in the store, which is exactly why people underestimate them. Fresh broccoli, spinach, or green beans can spoil in under a week. A can of vegetables can stay safe for 5 to 10 years when stored in a cool, dry place. That gap alone explains why they are such a useful buffer against both waste and price swings. Here is the hidden value. When you buy fresh produce and throw part of it away, your real cost per serving rises fast. A $2 bag of vegetables that ends up half spoiled is no longer a $2 purchase. Canned vegetables avoid that trap. What you buy is what you keep. They also do something fresh produce cannot do in an outage or emergency. They bring their own liquid. That means a can of peas or green beans can help with hydration as well as nutrition when water access is limited. Not ideal, but useful. Nutritionally, they still offer fiber, minerals, and useful vitamins. No, they are not a perfect replacement for fresh produce, but they are far better than having no produce at all. Keep a rotation of corn, carrots, beans, tomatoes, or mixed vegetables, and you give yourself a stable source of color, texture, and nutrition that does not collapse the moment the power goes out. And if canned vegetables are practical, the next item feels almost impossible. Honey is one of those foods that sounds exaggerated until you look at the evidence. Properly stored honey can remain usable for decades, and in some cases much longer. Archaeologists have found ancient honey that was still safe to eat. That is not marketing, that is chemistry. Honey lasts because it has very low moisture and high acidity, which creates an environment where bacteria struggle to survive. In plain terms, it naturally protects itself. Keep it sealed in glass or food-safe containers, and it can outlast most of the rest of your pantry. But honey is not just a sweetener. It also carries practical value that cheaper empty-calorie sweets do not. It can soothe a sore throat, help make bland staples more tolerable, and work as a small morale booster when meals become repetitive. That matters more than people admit. During stressful weeks, flavor fatigue is real. Financially, honey can replace several little purchases at once. Instead of buying specialty syrups, dessert toppings, and some over-the-counter comfort items, one jar covers a lot of ground. If it crystallizes, it is not ruined. Gentle warmth brings it back. A pantry that works well is not only built on calories, it is built on foods that stay useful in more than one way. And that leads straight to one of the cheapest emergency meals in any store aisle. Ramen noodles are not a health icon, but they are a very effective budget tool. A single pack is cheap, shelf-stable, lightweight, and easy to prepare. In normal times, that makes ramen a low-cost backup meal. In difficult times, it becomes a fast source of calories that asks very little from you. Stored in a cool, dry place, ramen can remain usable for years, with some estimates stretching much longer depending on packaging and storage quality. The key is low moisture and sealed wrapping. Brick-style packs usually hold up better than foam cups, which are more vulnerable to damage and breakdown over time. Here is where the money logic becomes clear. A lot of grocery overspending happens when people are tired and need something immediate. That is when takeout replaces pantry food. Keeping a few low-cost, long-lasting emergency meals like ramen helps cut off those expensive decisions. Add an egg, canned chicken, frozen vegetables, or bouillon, and a very cheap base turns into a real meal. No, ramen should not be the center of your entire food plan. But as a shelf-stable backup that can help you avoid a $15 convenience meal, it earns its spot. And this next item does not just help you eat. It helps you maintain the space around you too. White vinegar is one of the most quietly useful things you can keep in a pantry. It is inexpensive, takes up little space, and does not really expire. Buy a gallon once, and it can cover food prep, preservation, and household cleaning for a very long time. Its high acidity makes it naturally self-preserving. That means no constant replacement cycle, no spoilage panic, and no need to pay for single-purpose specialty products if a plain bottle of vinegar can do the job. Use it for pickling, brightening recipes, cleaning counters, cutting odors, and even handling minor household messes when commercial cleaners run out. This is one of those products where the budget lesson is bigger than the item itself. Multi-use goods save money because they reduce category creep. Instead of owning one bottle for cooking, another for cleaning, and another for preserving, one basic pantry staple covers all three. Stored away from direct sunlight, white vinegar can sit there year after year and stay ready. And that kind of reliability becomes more valuable when prices rise, because every durable multi-use item means one less impulse trip to the store. But once your pantry has a long-lasting base and a few multi-use staples, you still need real nutrition. That is where lentils stand out. Lentils are one of the best examples of a food being much more useful than its price suggests. They are inexpensive, dense with nutrition, and when kept dry and sealed, they can last for decades. That makes them a rare combination of low cost now and high value later. Compared with many animal proteins, lentils cost far less per serving. Yet they still provide protein, fiber, iron, and slow-digesting carbohydrates that help keep you full. That fullness matters. Foods that satisfy you reduce snack spending and stretch the rest of your pantry further. They also cook faster than many dried beans, which saves time and fuel. In a period where utility costs matter, that is not a small detail. You can turn lentils into soups, stews, curries, patties, or simple side dishes with very little effort. They absorb flavor well, so a few spices, some broth, or a spoonful of tomato paste can make them feel like a proper meal rather than a survival compromise. If you are trying to build a pantry that protects both your budget and your nutrition, lentils are exactly the kind of staple to prioritize. Cheap enough for everyday use, stable enough for long-term storage, flexible enough that they do not become dead inventory. And one shelf over, there is another quiet pantry item that becomes much more important once fresh versions become unreliable. Powdered milk is easy to dismiss until you need milk and do not have it. Fresh milk is one of the most perishable staples in the average grocery budget. It spoils quickly, prices fluctuate, and if your household does not finish it in time, the cost is gone. Non-fat dry milk solves that problem in a very different way. Stored properly in airtight packaging, Powdered milk can last 20 years or more. That makes it one of the clearest examples of converting a fragile refrigerated item into a stable pantry reserve. Add water, and you have milk for cereal, baking, coffee, sauces, pancakes, or bread. Is it exactly the same as fresh milk? No. But in practical use, especially inside recipes, it does the job well. And financially, it prevents a lot of waste. Instead of buying a full carton because you need a small amount for one recipe, you use only what you need. This is where many smart shoppers start seeing the larger pattern. How many things do we keep rebuying simply because they spoil before we use them? The grocery store profits from that cycle. Shelf-stable basics break it. They give you control over timing, portioning, and replacement. If that idea is starting to stand out, good. Because the next few items make the pattern even clearer. Salt is so ordinary that most people forget how powerful it is. It does not expire, it costs very little per use, and it has been central to food preservation for centuries. In a serious pantry, salt is not just seasoning, it is infrastructure. Without salt, bland staple foods become much harder to eat consistently. That sounds minor until you are relying on pantry food for days or weeks. But salt also helps preserve meat, support fermentation, and create brines that extend the life of other foods. In other words, it protects more than itself. Your body needs it too. Sodium supports fluid balance, nerve signaling, and muscle function. That is why salt becomes even more important in hot weather, heavy labor, or stressful conditions. From a spending perspective, this is one of the easiest wins available. For the price of one snack or one bottled drink, you can buy enough salt to support cooking and preservation for a very long time. Plain, non-iodized salt is often preferred for long storage and preserving tasks. Keep it dry, sealed, and simple. By now, you are probably noticing a pattern. The foods that offer the best long-term value are not glamorous. They are steady. They reduce waste, protect other foods, and make cheap meals easier to live with. And the next item may not be essential for survival, but it absolutely matters for morale. Instant coffee earns its place because emergencies and expensive weeks are not only physical, they are mental. A hot cup of coffee can restore routine, improve alertness, and make a difficult morning feel manageable. That may sound small, but anyone who has lived through stress knows it is not. Freeze-dried or vacuum-sealed instant coffee can stay usable for 20 years or more when stored properly. No grinder, no machine, no fresh beans, no dairy case, just hot water and a spoon. From a cost standpoint, that is a sharp contrast to coffee shop habits that can quietly drain hundreds or even thousands of dollars a year. A $2 homemade cup versus a $5 or $7 purchased one adds up fast. Even keeping instant coffee as a backup can prevent expensive impulse stops when you are tired, running late, or dealing with an outage. It is also compact, lightweight, and easy to store in emergency kits. And because caffeine can improve alertness and slightly suppress appetite, it can be surprisingly useful when routines are disrupted. Comfort counts. Routine counts. And once coffee is covered, the next concern for most people is protein. Canned meats are one of the most practical ways to keep shelf-stable protein on hand without relying on a freezer. Tuna, chicken, sardines, salmon, and products like Spam can sit in a pantry for 5 to 10 years, sometimes longer, if stored in cool, dry conditions. That is a huge advantage over fresh meat, which is often the first major loss during outages. The financial logic is straightforward. Protein is usually one of the most expensive parts of the grocery bill. When fresh meat prices spike, canned meat gives you a backup that is already paid for. It also prevents the common mistake of stocking only carbohydrates and then realizing too late that your pantry is filling but not balanced. Use canned meats in rice bowls, salads, pasta, sandwiches, soups, or quick skillet meals. The texture may not be perfect, but the convenience is real. Open, eat, done. In a pinch, that matters. It also helps reduce restaurant spending. If you have shelf-stable protein at home, you are far less likely to justify expensive takeout because there is nothing to eat. Often there is something to eat. It just was not convenient enough. Canned meat fixes that. And if you want another staple that stretches money through fullness and flexibility, oats are hard to beat. Oats are one of the strongest long-term breakfast foods you can buy. They are cheap, easy to store, and when sealed well in a cool, dry place, they can remain usable for decades. That gives them a rare combination of daily usefulness and emergency value. A box of sugary cereal can cost several dollars and disappear in days. Oats usually cost less per serving, keep you full longer, and can be used in far more ways. That alone makes them a better budget staple for many households. Nutritionally, oats provide fiber, iron, and slow-release carbohydrates. Financially, they help reduce the need for convenience breakfasts, vending machine snacks, and mid-morning impulse spending. A bowl of oatmeal with honey, powdered milk, fruit, or peanut butter is cheap, filling, and stable. They also work in baking, meatloaf, granola bars, cookies, and even soups. That versatility matters because foods that can cross categories are easier to rotate before quality drops. This is another pantry lesson hiding in plain sight. The best foods are not always the cheapest per pound. They are the ones that lower total spending by replacing several weaker purchases at once. And the next item does that while also preserving other foods. Sugar seems optional until you think about what it actually does. Properly stored sugar can last indefinitely as long as it stays dry. It does not spoil in the usual sense, and its usefulness extends far beyond sweetening coffee. Sugar helps preserve fruit in jams, syrups, and other shelf-stable preparations. It adds quick calories when energy needs rise. It improves the taste of plain foods, which helps families keep using low-cost staples instead of rejecting them out of boredom. And in stressful periods, a little sweetness can do more for morale than people like to admit. The budget angle is subtle but important. Foods that preserve other foods reduce waste. Foods that make simple meals more acceptable reduce takeout temptation. Sugar can support both when used intentionally. This does not mean turning your pantry into a dessert aisle. It means recognizing that a basic ingredient with a near-unlimited shelf life can play a practical role in food management. Keep it sealed, dry, and protected from humidity. And if sugar helps with energy and preservation, cooking fats do something even more important. They make a pantry actually work. Cooking fats, especially oils and ghee, are essential because cheap pantry foods are often low in fat. Without fat, meals feel less satisfying and deliver fewer calories. That becomes a problem quickly when money is tight or activity is high. Most common oils can last around 1 to 3 years depending on type and storage. Ghee can often last longer because it has low moisture and strong stability. Keep both in a cool, dark place and rotate them like any other pantry item. The hidden cost issue here is fullness. Meals with no fat often leave people hungry again too soon, which leads to more snacking and more spending. Add a spoon of oil to rice, beans, lentils, or vegetables, and the same meal becomes richer, more filling, and more practical. Fat also helps your body absorb certain vitamins. Ghee has another advantage. It handles heat well and can replace butter in situations where refrigeration is unreliable. Oils work for dressings, sautéing, roasting, and adding calories to basic staples. A pantry without cooking fat looks cheaper on paper than it is in real life because people abandon it faster. The next category fixes another common weakness in long-term storage: the loss of freshness. Freeze-dried and canned fruits help solve one of the hardest pantry problems, which is variety. Fresh fruit is one of the easiest items to waste. Bananas turn in days. Berries can spoil almost overnight. That means the advertised price and the real price are often not the same. Freeze-dried fruit changes that equation. Stored properly, it can last up to 25 years while keeping much of its flavor and useful nutrition. Canned fruit does not last as long, usually around 3 to 5 years, but it still far outperforms fresh fruit for storage stability. This category matters for more than sweetness. Fruit brings fiber, vitamins, and a sense of normal eating that many emergency food plans lack. Add freeze-dried berries to oats, powdered milk, or baking. Use canned peaches or pears as a side, dessert, or breakfast addition. Suddenly, shelf-stable food feels less harsh and repetitive. It also helps households with children, who are often the first to resist an all-staple menu. Keeping fruit in stable forms can protect both nutrition and cooperation. And once you have grains, proteins, and fruit covered, the next thing that keeps a pantry from becoming miserable is flavor. Bouillon cubes are tiny, cheap, and far more useful than they look. When meals are built from rice, lentils, oats, canned vegetables, or noodles, flavor can flatten out quickly. Bouillon fixes that in seconds. These cubes or granules usually last 5 to 10 years depending on storage, and they take up almost no space. Dissolve one into hot water and you have instant broth. Add one to rice, beans, soup, or gravy, and a very plain meal becomes much more satisfying. That matters because the cheapest food is not a bargain if your family gets tired of it and starts spending elsewhere. Taste is not a luxury. It is part of food compliance. If a pantry item helps people keep eating what you already bought, it saves money. Bouillon also lets you stretch ingredients. A simple soup made from water, rice, vegetables, and one cube can feel complete enough to replace a much more expensive prepared meal. For the price of a single fast food side, you can buy enough bouillon to season many pots of food. And if there are times when even that much preparation feels like too much, there is a category built for exactly that problem. MREs, or meals ready to eat, are designed for convenience under pressure. They come as sealed, complete meals with an entree, sides, snacks, condiments, and usually some kind of dessert. No recipe planning, no measuring, minimal prep. They are not the cheapest calories in the pantry, so they should not replace your core staples. But they fill a different role. They buy you time. During an evacuation, outage, travel disruption, or exhausting week, an MRE can be the difference between staying fed and overspending on expensive convenience food. Stored under proper conditions, many MREs remain usable for 5 to 10 years. Their portability makes them ideal for cars, go bags, emergency kits, and places where cooking tools might not be available. That is their real value. Not efficiency per dollar, but readiness per minute. Sometimes the smartest grocery decision is not the cheapest item. It is the item that prevents a much more expensive problem. And that same logic shows up in one of the oldest grain foods on the list. Wheat berries are whole wheat kernels, and they are one of the strongest long-storage grain options available. Kept in airtight containers in cool conditions, they can last 30 years or more. That is significantly longer than flour, which loses quality much faster because grinding exposes the oils and speeds, rancidity. This is an important money lesson. Buying food in its least processed stable form often gives you the longest shelf life and the best value. With wheat berries, you store the grain now and grind it later when you need flour. That gives you more control and less waste. They can be milled for bread, cooked into porridge, or used whole in soups and grain salads. That flexibility makes them valuable even if you are not baking every week. For households interested in deeper pantry resilience, wheat berries are a serious upgrade from relying only on commercial flour. And they lead naturally to one of the oldest examples of food built almost entirely for survival. Hardtack is as simple as food gets. Flour, water, and almost no moisture. That is why it can last for decades when made and stored correctly. Historically, sailors, soldiers, and explorers used it because it was durable, portable, and nearly impossible to spoil. Now, this is not pleasure food. It is hard, plain, and usually needs soaking or softening to be pleasant at all. But that is not the point. Hardtack is emergency, architecture. It exists to be there when softer, tastier foods are gone. In a modern pantry, most people will not rely on it often, but it illustrates a valuable principle. Shelf life usually improves when moisture, fat, and complexity go down. That is why so many highly processed snack foods disappoint in storage while a crude old staple can outlast them. Think of hardtack as insurance, not cuisine. You hope not to need it, but its value comes from sheer persistence. And if hardtack represents pure durability, The next item represents concentrated efficiency. Pemmican has one of the strongest survival reputations of any traditional food, and for good reason. Made from dried meat, rendered fat, and sometimes dried berries, it combines protein, fat, and dense calories in a compact form that can last a very long time when prepared and stored correctly. Long before modern energy bars, pemmican was trusted for travel and harsh conditions because it delivered serious nutrition without refrigeration or constant cooking. That same logic still makes sense now. If a food gives you high energy in small volume and stays stable, it becomes incredibly useful in emergencies. It is not as common in modern grocery stores as canned meat or peanut butter, but as a concept, it teaches an important lesson. Foods that combine shelf stability with caloric density are worth paying attention to, especially when storage space is limited. For bug-out bags, backup supplies, or high-efficiency emergency reserves, pemmican remains one of the most time-tested options ever created. And it brings us to the pantry favorite that wins on practicality, familiarity, and pure, everyday usefulness. Peanut butter takes the top spot because it does almost everything well. It is calorie-dense, rich in fat, provides useful protein, needs no cooking, and tastes familiar enough that most households will actually use it. That last part matters. The perfect survival food is not helpful if it sits untouched until it expires. 2 tablespoons of peanut butter deliver close to 190 calories, plus protein and nutrients like vitamin E, magnesium, and niacin. For the price, that is hard to beat. A jar can support breakfasts, snacks, sandwiches, sauces, oatmeal, baking, or straight-from-the-spoon convenience. Unopened peanut butter can last a long time on the shelf, often a year or more depending on type, and some varieties longer. It does not need refrigeration before opening, and even after opening, it remains easy to use. Compared with refrigerated spreads, deli snacks, or protein bars, it is usually much cheaper per serving. It also solves a very real spending problem: the expensive search for quick food. When people are hungry and in a hurry, they overspend. Peanut butter interrupts that cycle with something immediate, filling, and shelf-stable. And that really is the larger pattern behind this whole list. The foods that protect a household are not always trendy, but they are dependable. They last. They reduce waste. They make ordinary meals easier. They cut down on panic shopping, convenience spending, and the quiet losses that happen when fragile food expires before you use it. If you looked through this list and realized how many dollars leak out through spoilage, impulse buying, and short shelf life habits, that is a good sign. It means you are seeing the system more clearly. A smart pantry is not about hoarding. It is about buying with more patience, storing with more intention, and making sure your money keeps working after you bring the food home. Storm or no storm, outage or no outage, inflation or no inflation, that kind of preparation pays you back. If this helped you think differently about your grocery spending, consider subscribing. And the next time you shop, pay attention to which foods disappear quickly and which ones quietly make your household stronger, the cheapest by weight. Sometimes they're the ones that deliver the most usable energy and nutrition in the smallest, most durable form. That's why pemmican has survived generations of real-world use. It's not trendy, and it's not designed to look appealing on a store shelf. It is simply effective. And that brings us to the final item, which wins not because it's ancient or fancy, but because it balances almost everything people actually need. Peanut butter takes the top spot because it solves more problems at once than almost any other pantry food. It's calorie-dense, rich in fat, useful as a protein source, ready to eat, widely available, familiar to most households, and genuinely enjoyable. Just 2 tablespoons provide close to 200 calories, which is a powerful ratio when food is limited. Compare that with many packaged snack foods that cost more per serving, offer less nutrition, and expire much faster. Peanut butter is one of the rare grocery items that still feels like a bargain once you break it down by usefulness. It also requires nothing from you. No stove, no water, no prep. Open the jar and it's ready. Spread it on crackers, stir it into oats, mix it into powdered milk drinks, Add it to ramen for richness, or eat it straight from the spoon when energy is low and patience is lower. That convenience matters because the true value of a food is not just what it contains, it's how easily you can use it under pressure. And unlike many emergency foods that people buy once and forget forever, peanut butter fits into normal life. That means it's easy to rotate, easy to replace, and easy to justify financially. It supports preparedness without feeling separate from everyday living. That's really the pattern behind this entire list. The strongest long-term pantry foods are not gimmicks. They are stable, useful, cost-aware, and grounded in reality. They reduce waste. They protect against price spikes. They make storms, outages, and disruptions less disruptive. And they give you options when options get expensive. A well-built pantry is not about fear. It's about leverage. It means fewer emergency grocery runs, less money lost to spoilage, and more control when the market gets unpredictable. And maybe the bigger takeaway is this. Financially smart households usually don't look dramatic from the outside. They just look prepared. A few extra staples, a little more foresight, less dependence on perfect timing. If this helped you think differently about what belongs in a pantry and why, consider subscribing. Not because panic is useful, but because awareness is. And in a world where food keeps getting more expensive and less predictable, awareness pays.